I think it flatlines. If the task is really easy, you sort of take it to a limit, and then you move on and you look for something else.
Absolutely, right? So that's kind of weird, because if we're saying that the difficulty of the task is like if we talk about a slope, right?
Yeah.
And this is our capability, and here's the difficulty of the task.
Yeah.
That if we go too high, our performance drops, but interestingly enough, if we go too low, our performance actually drops.
Yep, makes sense.
That middle zone is what's called eustress. So this is when the body and brain are literally primed to where, so you have a certain amount of stress hormones that are active. So one example of this is like adrenaline, where adrenaline causes you to literally lose your peripheral vision and focus on a narrow perspective. So like literally, if you look at the physiology of the eye, when you have adrenaline at a high level in your body, normally your peripheral vision is actually about 180 degrees. A lot of people don't realize.
Right.
And then as adrenaline increases, it narrows down to a field of view of 30 degrees.
Yep.
And so
I've experienced it.
Yeah, so at 180, it's easy to become distracted because you're seeing this over there and you're seeing this over there. But if your adrenaline level is too high, then you also get this sort of tunnel vision where it's easy to lose perspective. And when you talk about an unclear mind, I think you're kind of hitting it right on the head where, you want to know that people are going to be checking your work. You want to know that your bosses are going to be expecting a lot from you. But then you can easily collapse down into tunnel vision where you start worrying about that, and then we tip it into the distress. We tip into non-optimal performance.
Yeah. And I think, I've thought about it, right? I've been at Amazon 15 years. I've had a lot of time to think about the culture. I think a lot of the culture, and I think this is common in workplaces, leaders lead through a scarcity mindset where they believe that if they say too much positive about your work, you'll get lazy. In other words, if they're not constantly pushing, you won't do it out of your own motivation. You're only doing it because you're being challenged. And the result is in many cases I hear this now, I not only see it, I hear it a lot. Most of the feedback is, okay, that was great, now here's 12 more things that could be better. Right? In other words, when something gets evaluated, it's one good thing about it and then 10 possible improvements.
Yeah, so I think that's, I understand how that works, because I think that's also how the cultures of like most top-end companies or institutions deal with function.
Okay.
And at the same time, I don't believe, in my experience, I think there's another way, which is actually better.
Help me more.
So this is sort of finding that area of eustress, where the degree of stress that you have actually primes your mind enough and gets you to, I think a good example of this is the flow state. So use stress facilitates a flow state.
Yes.
So you can't be bored and get into a flow state.
Right.
You can't be panicked and get into a flow state. But there are good studies that show that optimal work product comes from a flow state. But I think the culture that Amazon has, and it's not my place to judge, but we're talking about, I'm not saying it's good, I think it's common, so energy is that they have a very that oftentimes tips people to this stress and imposter syndrome and this kind of thing. And that at the end of the day, someone who is that's not going to be the best work product. That I think that like the best work product comes when you have an employee who's actually inspired to do the thing that they want to do. And you do have a certain amount of kind of oversight that keeps people honest. Because there's also studies that show that if you really give people a free rein, they're going to start slack off and they're going to work just as hard as they can to like not get fired.
Yeah.
So both of these
I see that too. Yeah.
And I think it also depends on what level you're talking about within an organization, because I think that when people demonstrated a high degree of internal motivation and value with like putting out, like they just demonstrate personal pride in doing good work, I think you can be more encouraging. Because they're going to have that natural, for lack of a better term, like neuroticism. So in medical school, for example, medical students are highly, highly neurotic, which is how we get there. So we worry a lot on the inside. We're afraid that we can study enough. We're afraid that we're not going to do well enough on the test. Our neuroticism is already high enough, and it strives us to be successful in the world. It's not a negative trait in terms of works. But once you get to medical school, you would be amazed at how much you can get a medical student to perform. Because their neuroticism is already high. They don't need it from their boss. In fact, encouragement, like, lets them do better. So, like, when you say, hey, like, I can see that you learned a lot about lisinopril and ACE inhibitors. That's awesome. I think this patient is really going to do better because you kind of know this information. And then, like, what they're going to do is go home the next day and they're going to be like, since they're so starved for positive reinforcement, that is going to reinforce their behavior to be like, tomorrow when I go to work, I want them to say that again. And I want them to say it again, and I want them to say it again.
That's like an endorphin hit, right? Positive feedback in a high performance culture. I think interestingly, I don't think we do a very good job of that in corporate America. In other words, what you're describing in the medical school is actually more positive than what. And of course, I'm generalizing. I'm speaking my own experience and not on behalf of the company, but I see. Some leaders do better than others, but overall, there's an opportunity for improvement there. And that's what I'm interested both in sharing with our audiences and also your advice on how I can change corporate America a little bit over time.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to take a step back. That's really useful to know. So first of all, the main question is, does the culture of performance actually lead to optimal performance? I think that while we see it widely amongst corporate America and top-tier institutions, so I think that the data sort of would imply that the answer is yes. I think there's a lot of interesting work happening at like HBS and other places where I think they're working there.
Right.
And that suggests otherwise. So like I know that when I go to actual like investment banks or private equity firms, and I teach them how to meditate, I teach them sort of a different way to look at things, their performance actually improves. So like their metrics get better. And what I mean by that is, so I think the real challenge here. So Ethan, let me ask you a question. So first of all, a couple questions. One is that I can like kind of talk, and if that's good and what you're interested in, I can do that. So I was going to explain like one very important nuance that I think a lot of corporate America doesn't understand. The other thing that I can do is ask you more personal questions about like your specific stress, and because I think we're going to get a lot of rich information there. I don't know what you're interested in or what you signed up for.
So I did sign up. I've watched a bunch of your shows because I co-stream with Devin like you did in the past. So I'm perfectly happy to talk about myself and reveal personal, my own struggles. Since I'm an executive, I'm not sure that's always the most helpful to our audiences who aren't always there. I don't know, but I'm happy to do that. So I'll let you be the judge of what's most effective to help people, because I know that's your goal as well as mine. You can also just talk a little bit if you want. I don't have any problem having a bit of a lecture. So
okay, sure. So I'm going to explain one concept, which I suspect may lay the foundation for our discussion, may or may not. And as it crops up, and then I'll start asking you more personal questions.
Perfect. Let's do questions.
Okay. So I'm going to just lay a little bit of a foundation with like a 5-minute segment. So a clear mind does the best work, right? Okay.
Yes, totally.
So one of the biggest problems that clouds a mind is attachment to particular things. And so one of the goals of meditative practice is to be detached from the outcomes of your actions. So this is a Sanskrit word called vairagya, and they believe that like peace comes from vairagya. So just to give you an example, if I like a girl and I want to ask her out, I can torture myself all kinds of ways about whether she's going to say yes, how to get her to say yes, things like that. But some of that could be calculated, like I could do certain nice things, I can dress a certain way, I can get her flowers, whatever. So there is some value to sort of that kind of self-flagellation that I put myself through. But at the end of the day, the best course of action is probably just to ask her out with confidence and then let her decide. Right? I don't try to control whether she says yes or whether she says no, but that's not how we actually operate. We try to control whether she's going to say yes or say no. And in the process of controlling how another human being reacts, we torture ourselves so much.
Yep.
You with me?
Yeah, it's the RAIN acronym from meditation, right? The RAIN is recognize, acknowledge, introspect, and then non-attachment.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Right. So vairagya is that last part.
Yeah.
Where you ultimately kind of say, and the funny thing is that if you think about like what kind of person is going to say yes, like I realized this in my own life shockingly. So I had a very unsuccessful dating life until I sort of entered into a relationship and then really stopped caring because I was in a relationship.
Right.
And then started hanging out with people, and then suddenly like women are treating me very differently. And I was trying to think about like why is that? The most extreme of which was. So one day I was on call at the hospital,
Right.
and someone that I had worked with showed up intoxicated at 2 in the morning,
Okay.
and was playing Pokemon Go, and I was like, what are you doing here? Why? And she was just, and so then I was like, look, I'm busy, but it was great to see you. Have fun catching your Pokemon. And then, as much as I have to think that people don't just show up at the hospital when you're working, like, they know you're on call,
Right.
It's the middle of the night. And so I have to think about, like, how does that happen? Like, did I suddenly magically become more attractive? I don't think so. I think what happened is, like, I started just behaving with confidence. And
Right.
that actually, like, gets the outcome that you sort of want. But the more that you worry about the outcome, the harder the outcome is to attain.
Totally. Yeah. The over-analyzing and analysis paralysis, those things cripple people. It happens a lot in public speaking.
Absolutely. Right? So when public speaking is another great example, like the goal is to just go up there and talk about what you want to talk about. Don't worry about the thousands of people. So
Yes.
one bit of advice that I got about public speaking is pretend you're talking to one person. Don't talk to one person. Works really well. So the challenge though is a lot of people say if I become detached from the consequences of my actions, doesn't that mean that I stop caring? And this is a big challenge where people say like, but caring about the outcome is what has driven me to succeed so far. So like, if I stop caring about the outcome, doesn't it mean that I'm not going to be successful? The short answer is no, because there's a difference between apathy, which is not caring, and
Right.
detachment, which is giving it your all and not worrying about the consequences, not caring about the consequences.
It's a hard duality to do.
Absolutely.
A hard duality.
Absolutely. So I suspect that when we come to, this is just because I've done a lot of kind of corporate consulting and stuff, generally this conundrum comes up, where people recognize that fear of consequence and a particular consequence is what has allowed them to get to this point. But that like they can still perform, but it causes them intense personal suffering. And it's my hypothesis that intense personal suffering doesn't actually lead to optimal performance. And that when I talk to more and more people like you and I ask you, when do you do your best work? It's not when you're suffering. It's when you're devoted to the action at hand and you're calm and you're thinking.
Well, it's flow state. It's actually setting high and flow state, for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about your personal. Any questions about that so far?
Not for me, no, I got it.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your personal situation and kind of what you find stressful within the balance of what you can do.
Yeah, of course. The thing that stresses me out the most, I guess, is every human, well, I don't know, I would talk about me. I want credit for good intentions. And what that means is when I bust my ass on something and I attempt to do my best work and it falls short, I already know that. And so I want help fixing it, not repeated pointing out that it didn't meet the bar. And so my highest stress specifically comes from feeling misjudged. Here's an example I can talk about that's outside of work but very crystalline. I had a doctor's appointment, and the doctor had 2 offices, small medical procedure, doesn't matter what, I was getting something removed off my skin. But I went to the wrong office, because they had 2 offices, and I confused the office. So I was there on time, but in the wrong office. And so as an example, you can excavate that has nothing to do with Amazon, but shows the problem. I just beat myself up. Like, oh my god, this has to be rescheduled. This is a specialist, and it's going to take 3 months to get back on his calendar. How could I be so dumb as to go to the wrong office? And I just got into a because I'm a high-performance person, I was down on myself for having done something so foolish or small as to pick the wrong doctor's office. And the same thing happens at work, where you have total right intentions, you do everything, you set up the appointment, or you do the work, you deliver the work, and then it falls slightly short, or there's a good intention but small mistake. And basically, in our workplace, added to my own maybe recriminations on myself would be workplace negative feedback. I'm like, well, you've made an error. We need to make sure that you've made an error because we're busy setting the standards, the performance.
Okay. I see a little bit of a fork in the road in terms of talking more about you, because I think a lot of this